What we're going to do is a quick presentation on the revised project. The original project was applied for in 2013, and through the process of the downtown community plan, we stepped aside and let that go forward, and now have come back with a revised project, which these gentlemen will go through. The format's going to be we'll do a quick overview of the project, then we have two different stations on either side of the room. One has to do, this side is more project related, and this side is more community benefit related. And the idea would be you'd attend both of them, and that's where we can have Q&A sessions, so you can actually have two sessions going on at once to try to expedite your time here. I think we have to be out of here at 9 o'clock, unfortunately, per the library. Couple things, there's been some groups that have published some things recently. We have, hopefully you'll get updated information tonight, and certainly there's more current images than what's being used. So anyone needs any of this information that you don't get on your own tonight, please contact us. We have a website, and we can provide you more current images than the ones that some folks are currently using. Let's go to the next slide. So we've got, my name's Jeff Worthe. I'm involved with the project. Our family's owned most of this land for almost 40 years now. 38 years ago, we bought this acre-and-a-half portion here that goes all the way from Ocean to Santa Monica. And then about 11 years ago now, we bought this extra 22,000 feet. So we've got about 2 acres of land there at the corner of Ocean and Santa Monica. I'll be handling this side of the room. Jana, who works with us as well, will be over on this side. And then behind me is Frank, Tensho, and all from Gehry Partners. They've been working with us since 2007 on this project. And we're happy that you're here to hear us present the revised project, and we're obviously here to answer any of your questions as we go through the night. Thank you. You go next.
Does this work?
Yep, should.
Hi. So you guys all belong to a community called Santa Monica, and so do I. And I belong to this community since Perry Scott was city manager, so before a lot of you were born. I haven't been very vocal in the community because I don't do that kind of stuff. I did work on Santa Monica Place, which was a big competition and a big thing, and we worked really hard back then. And the original design, if it was here tonight, you would probably vote for it. It did all the things we're saying this is doing. Buildings came to the street. The parking was underground. It was scale of the buildings were mixed, were better. There was housing. There was a hotel. It was mixed use. All of that was approved, and then something happened. And the then city council and everybody approved of what's there, which was there, which I wasn't very excited about. But that was reality. So I don't want that to happen again. I think this gentleman, Jeff Worthe, I've been working with him since 2007, is that it? Since then? So I've checked him out pretty good. And he puts his money where his mouth is, and he's very consistent, and I think honorable, and I think will deliver. So when you look at the city of Santa Monica, and you see some of the big mistakes that have been made, the corner of Wilshire with the tower and the apartment building that goes parallel to Ocean Avenue that blocks the views and out of scale, and a lot of stuff that has happened. It had me looking a lot at, that's why we built this big model, to look at what the city really is and what kind of texture one could create, an urban texture that would fit this city, that would make sense, given the pressures and given the desire to keep it special, keep it a place that doesn't look like everywhere else. It's a beach city. We want to retain that quality. We want it to be human scale. We don't want it to get out of line. We want it to be pedestrian friendly. We want to be able to walk down the streets and have activities. And we have a lot of that now. And a lot of it is successful. Some of it I don't like the design of, but they're not going to please me all the time. But it does work. The scale is pretty nice around the mall and around the shops. And so I'm proud to be part of this place. So on that model, we've shown this, and you can see the scale of it in relation to the buildings around. And it does vary so that it's not a, if you have a zoning law that has everything at 40 feet, you end up with Jefferson Boulevard, near where my office is, where all those apartments are just one wall. And you really got to watch out and be careful that doesn't happen. And it's starting to happen here in our town. So I don't know, when you go to those meetings, fight against that if you can. The variety is important because that's what makes it interesting. So if everything's the same height, it's not interesting. The public spaces can't all be the same or it's not interesting. So you've got to start thinking of the human scale and the relationship of the shops and the front doors of the buildings and the relationship to Ocean Avenue and the relationship to streets. And in this case, we've gotten rid of the opening on mid-alley that goes out onto Santa Monica and out onto Ocean Avenue. So reducing those entrances helps create the urban scale and the pedestrian scale, and that's what we've worked hard at. The architecture is not finished. It's pretty much on its way. We're trying to give it character, and I like the idea of the white because that does relate to a beach city. And the light buildings that exist. So we're following that model and using the shapes to create humanity. So instead of being solid, straight walls, there's some movement in them, which Jeff said he was willing to pay the extra costs for because it's a little more expensive, but I think in the end it gives the buildings a sense of humanity and scale, and all adds to the quality of the experience in the city and the relations to people and so on. So the setback also is to not have to break the verticality. And the public spaces are very generous and meandering, so they're not straight and militaristic. They're wandering, meandering spaces, and the little museum, which isn't so little. As we develop what that's going to be is going to be very special. So I think the ground floor with the shops and restaurants will add to the street life of the city. The kind of architecture of the building, I hope, will lend itself to the quality of the beach community, and the museum is going to be something special. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tensho Takemori, and I'm going to go over some of the kind of key points of our revised design proposal. All of the information that we give in the main presentation here will be available on either of the boards at the site, so you won't miss anything if you want to come back to it. So this is a picture of the existing site today. Just to kind of review what our proposal is. Our proposal is to bring one, a new cultural institution that incorporates two landmark buildings that are currently on the site. Number two, public observation deck on top of the tallest building. Number three is approximately 115-room hotel, which is the centerpiece of the project. Number four, rental apartments distributed in 4 buildings that include affordable housing. And number 5 is ground level retail and restaurants. Some of the changes, the primary changes that we've made as we went through an extensive community outreach process. We met with several groups. We had a community meeting. We met with the ARB in our previous process. So the first is that we've lowered the height of the building by more than 100 feet. We've reduced the FAR ratio by 0.5. So the FAR for the site being proposed is 2.65. For reference, what's allowed in the current downtown community plan is 4.0 on this site. One big move in terms of the housing is that the for sale or the condominiums have been eliminated from the project, and the number of rental apartments has been increased, including the affordable units. We've maintained, at the same time, we've maintained the size of the cultural institution. It's roughly 40,000 square feet, and for scale, that's about the same size as the Hammer Museum in Westwood. And we've preserved approximately 25% of the ground level for open space. One of the things we wanted to introduce and we used as an analytic was a concept called average building height. And so what this concept is if you take the site area at every particular height of the building and you add it up as a percentage, you can understand a relationship between density and height. And so, for example, while the tallest portion of our building here is 130 feet, when you average the height of our building across the height of all of our buildings across the site, you end up with an average height of 44 feet 3 inches. To give you kind of a comparison of how this works, there is a project that was approved, 500 Broadway, which is a residential project much nearer the expo line. That has a maximum height of 84 feet, but it has an average height of 64 feet 10 inches. And so that gives you a relationship in terms of density, massing, porosity. And you can see here, this is an elevation along Ocean Avenue. This here is the cultural institution or the museum, the hotel, and some of the housing. But what it does is it allows basically gaps in the building here to lie visual site porosity, and it places an emphasis on creating more ground level open space.
Let's talk about that for a minute. I know height is such an important topic in this city. So 500 Broadway, which was, I would say for this town process pretty quickly through the planning process. An 84-foot project, its average height is 20 feet higher than ours. But I looked at some other facts with it. 51% of that project's over 45 feet. 51%, half of it is greater than 45 feet. Only 25% of our project is. So it's got twice as much square footage above 45 feet and twice as much actually at 84 feet or above than we do. We have twice as much open space. So I think that the variety that Frank talked about is something that obviously we're really been focusing on, because I think, and you can see we stopped the model, or let me tell it differently, we added a piece to the model when that project was approved, so you can see what an 84-foot 4.0 project looks like in scale. And obviously, Tensho mentioned we have a designated FAR, not approved. A designated FAR for our site at 4.0, we're only proposing about 65% of that at 2.65. But I think you can see when you look at this model, you'll get a better sense of how different heights relate and how this average height concept can really play out in the city.
So the next topic is, as it relates to that, is publicly accessible open space. So the green on this represents the publicly accessible or the open space that's at grade, that's within our property line. And a couple of changes that we've made since the last design that we think improve the design significantly. So one is that each of the courtyards and paseos that we're proposing has a designated program entry associated with it. So starting here, these are the two historical buildings that are combined with a new building for the new museum. So this courtyard becomes the museum courtyard entrance. This right here will lead to the hotel's event space, or the ballroom, which has now been placed below grade. That's a large kind of massing volume that we don't have to deal with above grade. So this becomes the entrance for the museum, for the hotel's event space. And then more significantly, what we had is we had a courtyard here and a reuse of the alley here, and this was really going under the building before. And so what we've created is now a connected paseo on our property here, and reusing the existing alley. And our logic is that we're using part of our property here to create and turn vehicular traffic to Second, and then allowing this to be used for pedestrian-oriented uses. The hotel entrance has been moved from Ocean Avenue frontage to the Paseo, and what that helps us do is create more active street fronts, whether that be retail stores or whether that be restaurants along the street front, as opposed to a hotel entrance which has a little bit more of a passive street front along the street edge. We've also placed entrances for the residential buildings off the Paseo, and then this right here is the entrance that gets you to the elevators that take you to the observation deck at the top of the hotel tower. And this is a view here then of, this is Santa Monica. This would be an idea of what that kind of rejuvenated alley portion, which would be pedestrian only, could be like looking off of mid-block Santa Monica. And here you can see it leads to a connection point, which would be the entrance to the observation deck on top of the hotel tower. This is a view. We've lowered it now. You're at the 130 feet, which would be the top of the hotel tower, still giving you really unparalleled views of the city in all directions, 360 degrees. So mobility and circulation is another key element that's been identified in the downtown community plan. And today there are 3 vehicular entrances that are 2 off of Santa Monica, including the alley, and 1 off of Ocean. And so our site organization, what it allows us to do is to create a vehicular entrance off of the alley to an underground garage. Again, it turns service vehicles on our property out to 2nd Street, and then we have an exit for the garage, and we would have an entrance for a portion of the garage for residents that live on site. The hotel would be a valet operation here off of Ocean, creating a series of right turns in terms of the vehicular loop. But what that really does for us then, by limiting the vehicular entrances and exits to this portion of the site, is that we now have this portion of 2nd, the entire length of Santa Monica Boulevard, and the 350 feet of street frontage we have along Ocean with no vehicular crossings, and fosters a much safer and a much stronger pedestrian environment. And this is a view street level of Santa Monica. Then this is Ocean here on the left, and you can see the length of Santa Monica of what it could look like in terms of the ground level with an active street front without any vehicular interruptions. Housing. So as I said, one of the key changes that the client made in this was the elimination of all of the condominiums of the project. So previously we had 22 condominiums and approximately 24 rental apartments. So this has now been changed. We'll have somewhere between 75 and 80, and they'll all be rental units including affordable units. So there's been a significant increase in terms of the rental stock. They've also been organized into 4 discrete buildings. It's a little bit more visible on this model here. But one of the comments, in addition to breaking down the scale that Frank talked about, is we received a comment at the ARB to try and find an organization of housing that promoted cross-ventilation in every unit. And so your typical double-loaded kind of bar building, apartment building doesn't foster that. It's very challenging. And so these are actually smaller buildings in which there's only corner units or maybe 6 units on a plate that help foster that cross-ventilation concept that can take advantage of the ocean breezes here in Santa Monica. So finally is the cultural component. So there are 2 landmark buildings on our site right now. There is a Spanish colonial and a Victorian. In a previous development agreement, it was proposed and received well that the Victorian building could be moved. It currently sits right here. There's an existing 2 or 3 story building right here right now. And that proposal had proposed to move the Victorian to the north edge of this property, which is in direct proximity to the Gussie Moran House. I always get the name right. And so this creates an interesting relationship between 2 historic landmark Victorians, and then the Spanish colonial remains approximately in its current position. And the area then between these 2 becomes a courtyard, and it connects to a new building in the back that will also have, in addition, below-grade galleries. But one thing we think is important is that these 2 buildings now, as they are incorporated in a much larger institution, can be reintroduced into a more public and civic function. Currently, they are used as offices and small kind of retail shops, but now they could become fully brought back into the public domain. Again, it's approximately 40,000 square feet, which is about the size of the Hammer in Westwood. So that's our conclusion of kind of the basic statistics of the project and the main urban design principles and the changes we've made. I'll let Jeff have a summary of it, and then we'll turn over these boards, and all the information that we just talked about will be available, and we can continue our discussion. Thank you very much.